Hello, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Emily Griffith, and I'm the newest assistant with the Farm to School team. So we'll start with an overview of the grant, and then we'll have time at the end for questions. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rick Sherman, the Farm to School and School Garden Coordinator.
All right, thank you, Emily. And in the room, we have a couple other guests with us. We have Dustin Melton. He is our Child Nutrition Program Director, and Noemi Rios, who is with our Procurement Department at Oregon Department of Ed. They're waving at you right now, just so you know. We will get started now. Okay, so today, the purpose of today's webinar is for the education grant, which we call it. It is for the we also have a procurement grant, so we don't want to confuse that with that. That's the procurement grant is what we call the reimbursement of Oregon grown and processed food. We have separate recorded webinars about that one as well. You can refer to the grant webpage for information on that. But all materials can be in this webinar. It's going to be recorded. You can request a recording from us, and we'll tell you how to do that later, but it'll basically, Emily or AJ, our other assistant, you can get this recording at a later date. But everything will be found on our website, and there's the link for it there. We have a web shortening version of it, bit.ly/ORF2S. And that is the grant website. So if you go there and click on the Oregon Farm to School grant, and I think it will look like this, that is what our website looks like. And there's an Oregon Farm to School grant link at the top. You click on that and you'll go to the grant webpage. And that is what our grant webpage looks like. We'll be referring to everything on the right-hand side. That's the education grant. Everything on the left-hand side is our procurement grant, which is the reimbursement grant I was talking about earlier. But everything we'll be talking about is on the right-hand side there. So most important thing, keep checking the website for updates as things change. And then there's a listserv link on the grant webpage. There's actually a listserv link on the very top of our Farm to School page and on the grant page as well. As of today, we have over 1,100 subscribers. We have this as a requirement to participate in the grant, as this is the preferred method we communicate to the field for important changes. So please sign up for that. And I don't tend to bother people a lot on this. I just give important announcements. Myself or Emily or AJ will send out announcements on that, and you won't be getting multiple emails per week on that, but just basically for important changes. New emails for help. So we have an overall email that's farmtocnp@state.or.us, and that goes to all three of us. We can access that. You can still email us individually at rick.sherman or amy.williams or emily.griffith@state.or.us. Okay, so this grant is a second round of a continuation. We're right in the middle of a biennium, but it's for both school years. It's for the rest of this school year, 2019-20, and next school year, 2020-2021. So by the end of this, we're going to go over a timeline, but you'll have the last couple months of this school year and all of the summer and all of next year for this grant. So here's our agenda, what we're going to talk about. We're going to go through an overview and changes from the first round, some important changes. The application process and timeline. We're going to go over requirements for application and scoring. We're going to go over allowable and unallowable costs, and reimbursement process and requirements, and reporting, and then we'll have a Q&A part at the end. So we encourage you guys to use the chat feature for your questions. If you have questions as I'm talking, feel free to use the chat feature, and at the end, we'll go through as many as we can in the hour. Whatever we don't get to, we will answer and put on our frequently asked questions document that will be on our website. Okay, so the purpose of this grant, it's given authority by House Bill 2579, and it directs ODE to award grants to Oregon school districts and other people who, and school districts is kind of an old term because it only used to be available to them, but we'll talk about who's eligible, but for other outfits too, for the reimbursement of costs incurred in purchasing Oregon foods that meet certain criteria. That's the procurement grant. And this part, the education grant, is for coordinating and implementing food-based, agriculture-based, and garden-based educational activities. That's the important part to keep in mind for this part of the grant, education grant. So wanted to say first and foremost that this is a competitive grant. These funds are not guaranteed. We typically have a lot of competition for this educational grant. So it is a competitive grant. Our eligible sponsors for the education grant are school districts, nonprofit organizations, commodity commissions or councils, educational service districts, ESDs, federally recognized Indian tribes or schools overseen by the Bureau of Indian Education, soil and water conservation districts, and new this time for this session, providers of center-based programs for children in the Child and Adult Care Food Program, or better known as CACFP, and producers of food produced or processed in Oregon, including farmers, ranchers, or seafood harvesters. It's important to note that those organizations may partner with each other, but there has to be one organization overall that's in charge listed. So nonprofits, especially nonprofits, but everyone must be registered with the state Oregon Business Registry before you are awarded funds. Please use that official name of whatever your outfit, your organization is called when filling out that application. Sometimes sponsors go by many different names, we found out, and it's a little, it can get a little wonky. So use your official name when applying, and you must be registered with the state Oregon Business Registry before you're awarded funds. Okay, so this session we had $15 million allocated for the grant overall. Approximately $1.2 million will be for this specific round of education grants. So again, this is a competitive grant. We're planning on awarding up to 20 mini grants of the range of $2,000 to $10,000 each. And larger grants, our regular one is up to 10 awarded of $10,000 to $100,000. We could do more if a bunch come in like at a lesser amount at 50,000, let's say, but we are going to allocate 1 million for the second round of larger grants and the $200,000 for the mini grants. That's what we're planning to do. So we get this question all the time, so here goes. The last time we awarded $100,000 awards was the previous session. The average award funded during that session was $44,000, just over $44,636. That was the average award people submitted. The highest award we funded back then was $86,734. This is the first time we've tried mini grants. There was comments from our stakeholders that people wanted to try out Farm to School and do a simple project with a simpler application. So we'll get into that a little bit later. And then I just wanted to touch on, during the first round, we had some larger amounts that we've never done before too, in the $200,000 range. But this round is just going to be in that range of 100,000 and 10,000 for these two awards. So here, I want to pay special attention. We have a new agreement to the second round folks. The first rounders we had to deal with this too. So we have a new agreement, and there are insurance requirements in there. We've changed the way we've done agreements in the past. So we'll get into that right now, and I'll talk about it a little bit. So our new agreement, back in the olden days when we used to use a USDA agreement that we amended, that's no longer the case. So we use a template here, and that agreement template is on our grant website, and it's posted there now. So you should familiarize yourself with that agreement template before you decide to apply. And on that grant template embedded in it at the end, it's called Schedule B, we have the insurance requirements. And insurance is required in this grant, including workers' comp, commercial general liability, automobile liability insurance, directors, officers, and organization liability, physical abuse and molestation insurance. And again, that's at the Exhibit B at the end of the agreement template. So we have our procurement person, Noemi Rios, who is here, and I asked her to just kind of reiterate and talk about the insurance requirements a little bit. So Noemi.
Okay, thank you. The only thing that I really want to add is that for all the insurance certificates that you'll be required to submit to me, on the third page of Exhibit B, insurance, that lists all those insurances that Rick just told you about, there's a heading called Certificates and Proof of Insurance. And basically that section is going to indicate that the state of Oregon has to be listed as an endorsed additional insured. So that basically what that is doing, it's having the state of Oregon be part of your policy. And all those insurance certificates need to be submitted to me, to Rick, to his team before the grant begins. If you have any specific questions in regards to insurance, you can direct them to Rick, to me, to Rick, and then if he can't answer them, you can give them to me. And those are the only comments in addition to what Rick already said.
Good. Thank you, Noemi. And I'm sure we usually have a lot of questions after the fact, or we did last time about insurance. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat box, and I'll get to them as best I can. So thank you very much. Oh, and then the other thing was we were talking about, Noemi and I were kind of in a sidebar right before this, is just that we can't give you advice on this, but your normal insurance carrier should be able to navigate that field and be able to work with you on that. So just wanted to say that. Okay, so the grant application procedure, you will have to submit three things. The RFA, or what we call the application, it's called the RFA, request for application is the official term. And on that RFA, we'll have the different schedules for the insurance and all that stuff. So that's embedded on there. So the RFA, then you will have to submit a Excel budget and a budget narrative. And the budget narrative is just because the budget is on Excel, it's just a pretty basic Word document that gives you the opportunity to explain what's going on your Excel budget. So you can do that. We have all these items on our grant website, and there's also examples on there of some people that have submitted budgets in the past. It's in a little bit of a different format this session, but it's pretty easy to navigate. But we have all of these on there right now where you can go on and download them to your heart's content and look at them. There's also an education grant guidelines document, is a complete step-by-step guide that kind of gives you more information to complete the RFA. So because we didn't want the RFA to be 50 pages like it used to be in past years, it was a little daunting. The RFA is the place where you just fill out where it tells you to put in an answer, and the RFA kind of goes hand in hand with that, so it'll give you a little bit more information. This webinar is intended to be an overview, and I think we're hitting everything on there, but the education grant guidelines doc that I just talked about has more pages that gets a little bit more introspective and is able to answer a lot more questions. Also, there is a frequently asked questions document. It's kind of a living, breathing document, and I add questions from this webinar, and as I get email at questions, and as Emily and AJ get questions, we add to that document, and we'll update it as necessary and put it on the website. So that's a really good thing. It's changed from past years because the grant keeps changing and evolving. So I think all the questions on there now are pretty relevant. I went through it all, but we will continue to update that. There's also an electronic grant management system instructions, or EGMs. EGMs is our what we use for dispersing funds. And so if you haven't participated in one of our grants, and you'll need to get signed up for that. So that packet is up to date, and that's where you'll go to learn all about EGMs. And Emily and AJ are getting to be experts at EGMs, all things EGMs, and getting you signed up there too. So they're really good resources too for that. But so there's that packet is on there. And as I said, the budget worksheet example and the budget narrative example are on the supporting resources section. And examples of previous funded projects. Actually, at the very top of the document, we have kind of a press release of the last 24 projects that were funded. It's at the top, and it's basically one of the first questions you get is 100 words or less, describe what your project is, and that's what we use to put in that release. So you could learn the different kinds of projects we funded during the first round. And again, we didn't do a mini grant session, just the larger ones. So, but that's what we have right now. So later today, or probably more like tomorrow, this recorded webinar takes a while to render. It says posted on website. That's not true. Sorry. In order to post it on the website, it has to be accessible to the sight impaired. And I found it's almost impossible to do that. I tried to do a webinar and I worked about 8 hours on it and gave up. I wasn't even halfway through it. So we are able to send this file to you via secure file transfer upon request, but we can't post it on the website. So that's false on there. Sorry, forgot to change that. And then we have a last day to ask questions, Friday, April 3rd. And there's a week lag time where to put everybody on the same playing field, we ask if you do have questions to do a week before we have the applications due, which is the next bullet, Friday, April 10th. The completed applications are due. When you come, you give them to us and we'll tell you the address to send them in. We'll email a receipt to you to say that we got them. But it's due Friday, April 10th at midnight. And yes, I get applications up until midnight on Friday, April 10th, and I will be checking around then. Dustin will pay me to do that. So there we go. And then on May 8th, the awards are announced. We have a lot more time built into this to do a good job of scoring all the applications. So quite a bit of a time to do that for our award selection committee. But we plan to award the awards on, or announce the awards on May 8th. Funds will be available as soon as we received a signed agreement and you're all set up in EGMs. The only caveat I'd put to that is that, we have the right to delay award announcements if something isn't right on our grant selection process, as we're going to be paying extra special attention to that process. And if we don't have consensus or something's not right, we could delay it a bit. But we plan on announcing on May 8th. Other important dates, this is along the same lines as the first round people. There's a progress report due on September 30th. And knowing that some of you guys might get started around then because we're starting this spring, that's fine. But we ask that a progress report is due on September 30th. And then all funds must be spent, and we say products received. If you buy anything for your program that you're teaching with, you have to have them in-house by June 30, 2021. All funds have to be spent by the end of this biennium. And then we have a month to clean things up, and we have all funds must be processed in EGMs after July 31st or right around then. All unclaimed funds will be liquidated. We've had problems with this in the past where people have just assumed it would be okay to send in a claim the next school year. And gosh, I think we just got one a couple months ago from 2 years ago, and it was like, what? So again, we will have a mandatory webinar for all sponsors that get awarded. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but that is going to be the main message of this, that right after we close this down, we have to get everything processed in EGMs because the money goes away. It goes back into the general fund. And it's our job to make sure everything gets spent. So we will, that's Emily and AJ's job, is to make sure all the folks that are awarded a grant are spending their money. And there will be more about that in the mandatory webinar. And then September 30th, 2021, the end right after the biennium, that's when the final report is due. That says what you've done with all these funds. Okay, so if you're successful in being awarded grant funds, an email will be sent to the applicant that will include an award amount and links to the agreement letter, which is on the website right now, to be signed and returned to ODE, along with the insurance requirement stuff. And then Excel claim reimbursement form, EGMs, info and instructions, which is, again, all on the website, but you'll get it in an email to everybody that needs to be informed for your grant, that just reminding them where everything is. And then once the agreement letter is signed and returned and you're set up in EGMs, you'll be able to begin utilizing your funds. So anybody, we don't have restrictions on who can fill out the application, but the person who has signature authority or can enter into agreements has to be listed in the appropriate section on the application. There could be multiple school districts and other applicants working together on one project. It's important that all parties are aware of what's going on. And the reason I say that is we'll have an applicant that says, hey, I'm working with XYZ school district, and then the person that entered the application retires or leaves or quits, and then we hang on just a second. Then we're able to have to tell those people, like, oh, were you aware of the project? Sometimes people weren't aware. So it's up to you, if you're applying for this grant, that your partners know about it if you intend to work with them. And so So just make sure everybody's well informed. So again, does everybody know about the project? If you're working with food service personnel about teaching educational activities in the cafeteria, do they know? Do principals, do the superintendent, the business manager, are they okay? Are they a buy-off on this too? Do they know what's going on? If a department or a specific entity is proposed, they should be in the loop. And again, this is what I was just blathering on in the last slide, but we had an application filled out, received an award. They left their position and everybody listened. The proposal wasn't really informed of the award. So make sure everybody knows what's going on. Somebody is not on the webinar and they're trying to call me. Sorry about that. Okay. So I will go over the score sheet a bit in detail. It's located, and my box is there. I can't see what I'm seeing. It's located in the RFA. Yeah, on page 8 and 9 on the RFA. It's located there in the meantime, but here's some highlights. We've improved this application process. It used to be hang on just a second. It used to be that applicants wrote a lot. We asked them to essentially write a book, and the scoring committee was charged with figuring out how to assign points to some of those by going through with a fine-tooth comb. But now the score sheet and the questions in the RFA match exactly, so pretty proud about that. So we'll go through that in a second, but the following sections correspond with the, hang on just a second, backspace. The following sections correspond with the bill that gives the grant the authority. So the first section is proposed project and activities are well designed and likely to exceed, and we have a 28-point section for that. And note the activities should be with students primarily. There's a section for dealing with parents and things, but these activities should be mainly geared to going with the students. The project should promote healthy food activities. The project should have clear educational activities. The project involves parents in the community, as I said before. Educational activities are tied to school districts' farm-to-school procurement activities. Proposed activities are culturally relevant to the students served, and projects should serve a high percentage of children who qualify for free and reduced meals, up to 15 points for that. And so, again, educational activities that are tied to school districts' farm-to-school procurement activities, 15 points. Schools where these educational activities must benefit high free and reduced schools. Schools must be at least 40% free and reduced to apply, but this is an average for all the schools in your project. So sometimes we'll get a school district that might be under the 40%, but they might partner with a neighboring school district that's higher free and reduced, and as long as the total of all of them is over 40%, then you're eligible to apply. So that's an important thing. I always get that question. So in order to get that free and reduced data to see if you are eligible for that, we use October 2019 free and reduced data. I was just talking about this with one of my coworkers today with another grant, and this is what we use for all programs for like the fresh fruit and veggie program grant and other ones. October 2019 seems to be the best indication statewide of all the kids are finally back in school after, and they filled out applications after September. It's typically a large month where we can gather data. We always have some people that say, oh, my particular school has better results in a different month, but to keep everybody on a level playing field, we use October 2019 data. So we're a stickler on that. You used to be able to look up your schools. There used to be a report generator, which is no longer active, I'm sorry to say. There are plans to do another one. As I was talking with my data guy the other day, he said about 3 weeks ago, we were about a month out, maybe. So I can't commit to when that new reporting thing. So the best I could do is have you contact us at farmtocmp@state.or.us. And Emily would be happy to help you figure out what your project's free and reduced status is by getting some information from you of what schools you're talking about in your project, and we can look them up and see if you're eligible before you take the time and fill out the entire application. That might be the first thing you'd want to do. So that's as best we can do right now until we have that search engine fixed where you could try to figure it out yourself. There's also a bonus section point on there. We've had these bonus points before, but in the spirit of transparency, it's on the application now, so you can see this. We reward first-time applicants, and if you haven't received an award in the past, so if you applied in the first round, you could still be eligible for this. But it's if you haven't received an award, you could be a first-time applicant or a first-time grantee, rather, and so you could get 5 points for that. If you are one of the tribal organizations or Bureau of Indian Schools, it's worth 10 points. If you're an ESD or a producer, which we haven't had one yet, so we want to encourage some of those sponsors to apply, that's worth 5 points. And if you're deemed innovative or high priority funding by the scoring committee, you could get 5 points for that. And you know, there's a lot of opportunity for innovation here, something that hasn't been done before. I have lots of examples running around in my head, and I get them all the time. Sometimes that's 5 points, but that might not be enough to overcome the whole thing. So you still need to have a really good application, but you might be able to get some more points if you have a really good innovative idea. That might be enough to put you over the top. And so this is what the new score sheet looks like that is on the end of the RFA, which it's on the website right now. New scoring and everything matches the RFA, and the different categories are there. Like if you'll see here, proposed project activities are well designed, likely to succeed. The first question is, is there an individual or team identified as coordinating the effort? And that's worth 2 points. And so like when you answer that question, you will either get 2 points or you could get partial points. We've instructed our scoring committee, you can give partial points if they've hit some of the items. They cannot award less than ½ a point. So the least amount they could get is a ½ point, but they could get anything in increments ½ points up until the possible there, in this case 2. So they could do that. And I'm not going to go through all of these because I've already kind of hit them, but you can look at that score sheet again and look at the points. I will point out a couple things that your goals and objectives and some things are weighted higher than other things where, yeah, we just have a team. They're not like individual points. They're not divided by the total amount. There's some things that are deemed more important are have more points. So healthy food activities, clear educational activities, parents involved in the community. Educational activities are tied to school district's farm to school procurement activities. That's basically like, and again, farm to school, where the magic happens if you're teaching about what the kids are eating. So if you're able to work with your cafeteria on whatever they're serving, if you're teaching them about the same things, you can get points for that. And there's more points available, like for the second bullet, monthly, weekly, or daily. So if you do it monthly, you'd probably get 2 points, weekly for daily, it'd be the whole 6 there. That's why that's designed like that. Brand new section here, the cultural relevance section. We spent some time on this, and these are aligned with our Every Student Succeeds Act, which is legislatively mandated for that same language. So it talks about even if you're in a school district that doesn't have a racially diverse population, but you could still teach about the heritage and educating the students about the histories and habits of diverse cultures that used to be in your neighborhood or is in your neighborhood. So there's still a culturally relevant part to this, and there's 10 points available in this whole section. There's a part about demographics of your educators reflect the demographics of the student in Oregon or your district. So it gives you a little bit of latitude there. So there's that whole new section. And then again, there's a project must benefit schools with a high percentage of free and reduced. We will fill out all that section. You don't have to worry about your free and reduced, but if you're concerned about figuring out what that is, if you're eligible, you can ask us, like I said before. Okay, we're getting down here towards the end to some unallowable and allowable costs, allowable and allowable. Expenses must fall under these 4 categories, and this is reflected in the budget. Things must fall under implementation, planning, coordination, and administration. So something should be in there when you're designing your budget. I mean, most of everything probably should fit in that implementation thing, your labor, your teaching, whatever you're doing for teaching those educational activities should be implementation, but there's going to be some things that are going to be planning your lesson plans or coordinating, calling the farmers, setting up tasting tables, calling farmers for field trips. And some administration in there too. So it has to fall under those 4 categories. And then we have in the rules that at least 75% of your school must be directly related to implementation. Like I said, other 25% may be used for other reasonable things relating. Hang on, I got to move a box. Other reasonable costs relating to administering but not implementing the program. So like some of those things that people ask about, what about your incidental costs or other costs that may not be directly related, as long as that level does not increase over 25%, it can be allowable. Again, please refer to your frequently asked questions document on the resources section on the grant for specific examples of that. Administrative costs, you must be specific when describing administrative costs. They should relate directly to the lesson or educational activity. Okay, this is a reimbursement grant. However, you may request up to 25% of your award in the form of an advance. The award notification will have instructions on how to do that advance. So when you are successful in getting an award, we'll give you an email that'll say there, it'll have a deadline of when it'll be about 2 weeks after being notified that you can get up to 25% of the award, because we have to put that advanced language into your agreement. You don't have to get an advance. Some people want all of their money in advance, and we don't do that. We can do up to 25% to get you started. After that 25%, the award reverts back to a reimbursement grant. If you do get an advance, you'll have to provide documentation of all items that were purchased with those funds. And I said see review process there, but there's a deadline of up to 2 weeks to request an advance, as I said. And after 25% is spent, the rest of the award converts to the regular reimbursement grant management. So for reimbursement, the grantee must fill in items on the Excel worksheet. I'll get to that in a second. They must submit the Excel worksheet to Oregon Department of Ed. Keep the invoices, receipts on hand to justify the worksheet. Do not send them to us. We will look over the amount and let you know if all the items are allowable or not, and we'll tell you to put the dollar amount in EGMs. Please do not simply put the amount of money in EGMs first, and we have to make sure everything is allowable or not allowable before you do that, and it can get messy when we have to reject claims and stuff. So if you follow the procedure, give us the Excel worksheet first, to our Farm to CMP website, like I was highlighted before. We'll let you know it's okay. Then you can put the amount in EGMs. So the claim worksheet will be located on the resources section of the grant website when we are closer to award the, I think actually we have one on there right now. It's on there now. So we will schedule a new webinar for awardees of this grant for detailed instructions on how to do this process. So that's right. It won't be, I won't take up everybody's time on how to do reimbursement right now if you're not awarded. So we will do that. That webinar will be mandatory for all successful awardees. We'll have a recording available upon request. So the review process, like I was saying, this applies for people that get an advance and other lucky folks that get randomly selected to get review. It's not associated with other child nutrition program reviews. If you are selected, we will select one claim to verify, and Emily will probably do that, and you will copy and scan your invoices associated with that claim and send them to Emily. You can either snail mail them or scan them and copy them to Emily, and she will do a desk audit. I think it says that. No, it doesn't. Okay, that's what she'll do. And then the last thing is we have a term I want you to be familiar with called adequate progress. And ODE needs to ensure that these funds are spent. If adequate progress isn't being made, grant funds will be taken back and redistributed to other sponsors. So we define adequate progress as at least half the money spent halfway through the grant, 3/4 of the money spent 3/4 of the way through, etc. I said we had problems with this last year, mostly for a couple of sponsors. That we had one that went out of business, and we had another sponsor that did really well in past years, but this last year they didn't do it. So I gave them a little bit more latitude than I should have, but we have more help this year with the hiring of AJ and Emily. So they'll be able to spend more time double checking on this and giving you guys reminders. So we have to make sure that this money is spent. We have to report back to the legislator on the progress of this and the final outcome of the grant. So that enables us to do this. And so that's one thing why we have to get the money spent and the reporting. So that's why we have to have a progress report due on September 30, 2020, and a final one due a year later on 2021. We typically have a Google link to take the survey. We have PDF copies of the report so you can print out and have, we don't want to have the survey live until it's time to take the survey though, but you can go online and print out the PDF copy of the progress report right now to see about that. So, sorry, I can't talk right now. Okay, so getting down here toward the very end, last slide. So again, where you send all this stuff is the Farm to CMP web, the email address, farm2cmp at ode.state.or.us, or you could do state.or.us. Both versions work now. And you can reach out to us individually at these emails, Rick Sherman, Amy Williams, Amy Griffith. And that any one of those emails work. The farm to CFP one is preferred because all three of us will be able to see that. That's where you would send in your all of your application stuff too. So there's that. All new questions from this session will be put on our website in our frequently asked questions document, and we will update it periodically as more questions are received. Okay, now we are at the getting towards the question time. And I am going to give this over. We have a lot of questions coming in, and I'm going to give my voice a break and roll this over to Emily, and she's going to take some questions for us. And we have 15 minutes.
Okay, let's see. I see the first question here, which is an insurance question. Is the insurance criteria for the mini grants as well?
Yes. Regardless of the amount of money, the agency has determined that the insurance is required for all of grants, regardless of the amount.
All right.
Okay, let's see. Our next question is, will abuse molestation insurance be required before application or once approved?
Once approved. So if you have those insurances now, that's great. For these grants, you'll need to have it by the time that you are awarded the grant.
You can use the mouse too.
See, we have another one about insurance. I don't know if we have all these types of insurance. What if not all of these types are applicable to our organization? For example, the abuse and molestation insurance.
I encourage you to print out or send the grant agreement that is posted on the website to your insurance agent. As I mentioned before, all of those policies are available. I'm not sure through your agent, but another agent can provide it. In regards to molestation, I believe all of these activities have to be in benefit of students. And so anything related to students requires the molestation insurance.
Yep. And just a word about that. Kind of, some more, I guess, some common sense into this. Because this is required through all of our grants now. It would be one of those things like if something were, God forbid, to happen in that, we're liable, ODE is liable, you're liable, so it just covers yourself. So you want to cover all your bases, but it's good to know. So know that before you apply. I think we've done our due diligence of warning people, so it's required, and if it's too arduous to apply for with knowing that, then I guess you know that. So,
is the state of Oregon supposed to be on the insurance before the grant is approved?
No. I would wait for you to find out whether or not you will be awarded. However, I encourage you to start having that conversation with your insurance agent to get estimates for the cost, to find out if they can provide it or if you have to go to a different provider. So start having those conversations now.
That's helpful.
All right, so getting to the next one here. Let's see. Where can we locate the frequently asked questions?
It will be, if it's not on there right now, it'll be on the website. I think I was waiting for the questions for this webinar. So within the next 2 days, it'll be on the resources section on the Farm to School grant webpage on the right-hand side.
Okay, the next question is, do early childhood programs qualify?
Yes, so early childhood programs like that serve meals through the Child and Adult Food Care Program would qualify. So the important thing is this is a Child Nutrition Programs grant, CNP, and so any school children in Oregon that have are able to access National School Lunch Program or Child and Adult Food Care Programs or things like that are eligible. So like if you're like a homeschooling situation or a private school that doesn't um, participate in National School Lunch Program or Child and Adult Food Care Program, they're not eligible. Yeah.
Getting to the next question. We are an ECE Head Start with 100% CACFP. It looks like that qualifies? Yes.
Correct.
Okay, correct. Will this slideshow be sent to everyone?
It will be sent to those who request it.
As a Head Start, do we have to tie to school districts' farm-to-school procurement activities?
No, you can do your own procurement activities of the meals you serve at your Head Start. Good question.
Somebody's asking if we can expand a little bit more on what a producer EST would be.
Well, there's two different things. Those were two groups that have not applied before. An ESD, Educational Service District, we have a few of those like Multnomah ESD, and they operate some child and adult food care programs and actually some alternative schools, some alternative high schools, and they serve meals. So an ESD they would be able to do that. And we've said a producer, like a producer that produces food, as long as they partner with a school district or child and adult food care program, they can provide educational activities too. I don't know who that would be, but a producer, as long as they partner with a school district or CACFP, they'd be eligible to do that as well.
And we have a question again about the URL where the application materials are.
Application, what is the website? Oh, yeah, it's if you just Google Oregon Farm to School, you might be able to get there, but it's if you put bit.ly, bit.ly/ORF2S. That's the shortened version of that where you could do that.
Can the same organization apply for both the mini grant and the larger grant?
That's a good question. Yes, you can. You would probably only get one of them. The scoring committee, I would, if you have a small project you want to try to apply for, go for it. And if you want to to try to hedge your bets and try to be successful as many as you can. I doubt if you would get both, but you might want to try for both. The other thing is we wanted, since I'm talking about multiple people in multiple areas, the committee, once they're done, we'll look at it. We want to make sure we have regional representation as well as larger urban and rural, Eastern Oregon, coastal. So we want to try to spread that around. So if there's two that are very similar scored, we have that right to say, well, let's do one of these in this area too. So there's that part of it. But so we want to try to honor that.
What are some examples of allowable purchases?
Allowable purchases would be just off the top of my head, if you're doing lesson plans and you want to buy some lesson plans, or if you want to teach about a raised bed, and so you have to build a raised bed. You have to buy that to teach in that raised bed. If you want to have implements like shovels and trowels to teach kids about garden maintenance and things like that, that's an allowable thing. we will have that on our frequently asked questions document too that we'll post on there, some more allowable costs.
We have a question about, do you award partial funds or are applications only funded in whole?
Yes, to the first part. We've done that in the past. The scoring committee sometimes goes through and they look at all of your activities proposed and they say, you know what, 9 out of 10 of these things are great, but this 10th thing really doesn't fit into the your allowable or unallowable, or it doesn't really deal with student activities. It might do something else, so they might deduct that portion. The other thing we do is we have a certain amount of budget to award, and when we run out, we might say, you know, we only had enough money to give you half the money, so redo your budget. Instead of giving you 100,000, we could give you 50,000, let's say. So we can award you 50,000 and give me a new budget for to work that into your plan. We've done that before too. So yeah, we reserve the right, it says in the RFA, to award lesser amounts.
All right, this next one says, will you talk more about the mini grants specifically?
I would suggest that you would pull the mini grant score sheet off the website and look at that. Basically, there's no differentiation in the bill about larger grants or smaller grants. It just says the education grants have to be well designed, likely to succeed, directly serve students, serve parents in the communities, all that stuff. So it says all of that. So we just have the mini grant as a stakeholder input that said, you know, we wanted to try to do these to fund smaller projects, but we wanted it easy because the grant process seems very, very daunting. So we have to have the same criteria, but we have a simpler application that hits all of those for a smaller project. So I would say it's really the same things I talked about in detail, but for instance, the equity question doesn't have 4 questions. It has 1 important question to hit. So because it's a smaller project, we just didn't want to spend the time to do that entire 30-page RFA for that a smaller project.
Okay. The next question is, do applicants need to serve a high level of free and reduced lunch students to be eligible to apply at all, or just to be eligible for those points in the scoring rubric?
You have to be at least 40%, and we arrived at that through other programs and child nutrition programs. We use typically use like the same like Title I programs as 50%, but we can go down to 40% for using census data we've done in the past. And so that's what the years and years ago when we first started this back in 2012, that's the number we came at. So you'll get 5 points for being at 40%, and you'll get 10 points, I forget, if you were like at 70 or 60%, and then 15 points if you're at an extremely high, like 80%. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a sliding scale that seems to have worked, but you have to be at least 40%.
Okay. Next is, we are an education center that works with youth from all over Lane County, registered with their home schools, but attending ours. Does my program qualify to apply?
If your program serves meals through the National School Lunch Program or the Child and Adult Care Food Program, they would apply. But if they're just homeschoolers that are applying or that are attending your program and you don't serve child nutrition program meals, then no, they're not eligible to apply.
Several of our schools are community eligibility provision schools. What percentage is this for free and reduced meals?
Several of our schools are community eligible. So they're probably going to be 100%. And that in that case, we get an average of all the population for these schools, so that we would take that into account. And when we're doing that, we would figure out that average overall. Okay, You guys, it is 2 o'clock. There's more questions. I'm going to put all of these questions down on our frequently asked questions document at the bottom of it, and I will re-answer the other ones that I'll have a little bit more time to think about it, but I will get to the ones that you have recorded at the bottom of this that I haven't got to. There's a lot of questions. I think we had 90 people sign up for this, so I really thank for all your participation.
Thank you so much, everybody.
You want to say thank you?
Thank you.
Dustin, say thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We all said thank you. Thank you very much, and we will talk to you guys later.